Michael.
Reacts. Halloween Wage 20 is a direct sequel to Halloween 2, focusing on what happened to Laurie Strode 20 years after that night of terror. Now the head mistress of a private school, Laurie lives under a false name and is still haunted by her trauma. But when Michael Myers finds her again, she decides to stop running and face her brother Hedden. In a brutal showdown, Laurie takes the fight to the limit. At the decisive moment, she traps Michael between a van and a tree, pinning him in place. The masked killer, who once seemed invincible, is finally vulnerable. With one final strike, Laurie lifts the axe and decapitates him under the silent night sky. The most definitive, most satisfying, and most symbolic death in the whole franchise. Laurie had finally defeated the evil that haunted her for decades. At least that's what she thought. Because in the next film, we'd get a very controversial twist. The fire. In Halloween Resurrection, we find out Michael Myers wasn't the one who lost his head in the previous movie. Turns out that before the final scene, Myers had attacked a paramedic and crushed his larynx so he couldn't speak, and switched clothes with him. Yeah, credit to the writer for coming up with that one. So, Laurie ended up decapitating an innocent man while the real Michael escaped to keep killing. In this movie, we also find out Laurie was committed to a psychiatric hospital after killing that paramedic. Not long after, Michael returns to Haddonfield. This time he finds his old house being used as the set for a reality show that's being live streamed on the internet. Michael then turns the filming into his new hunting ground. At the film's peak, in the middle of a setting already engulfed in flames, Michael is trapped between exposed electrical wires. A brutal surge of electricity ripped through his body, leaving him more vulnerable than ever. A massive explosion in the middle of the fire finishes the job, consuming him in flames. It looked like the final end. Evil, reduced to ashes. But as we know, Michael always comes back. In the final scene, his charred body is taken to the morgue. The coroner sets out his tools, ready to start the autopsy. But before the first cut, something chilling happens. Michael's eyes open, and just like that, the age 20 timeline ends. No continuation, no explanation, just the certainty that once again, death wasn't enough to stop Michael Myers. When it seemed like the legend was finally over, the myth was reborn under a new and even more brutal vision. The Headshot. In 2007, director Rob Zombie rebooted the franchise, retelling Michael Myers' story with a more brutal and psychological approach. The film dives into Michael's troubled childhood and his motives for becoming a killer. The story follows him from his time in the psychiatric hospital to his escape and return to Haddonfield, where he finally meets young Laurie Strode for the final showdown. After a brutal chase, Laurie manages to put an end, or so it seems, to Michael's rage. They end up on the second floor, and in the struggle, both of them crash through a window. Still on the ground, Laurie grabs Dr. Loomis' gun and pulls the trigger several times point blank, but the gun jams. Before the worst happens, a shot is fired. And Michael appears to be dead. His breathing stops, his body goes still, and silence takes over the scene.
Michael, for God in hell, die!
The end of Rob Zombie. Halloween 2 continues Rob Zombie's reboot, digging deeper into Laurie Strode's psychological trauma after the night of terror. While Dr. Loomis tries to cash in on his fame with a book, the bullet disfigured part of Michael's face, but it didn't stop him from rising again. So he returns even more monstrous, resuming his killings with greater brutality than ever, now driven by visions of his mother and his younger self. The violence is more graphic and extreme, culminating in 2 different endings that close this timeline for good. The final sequence of this film has 2 versions, and both mark the conclusion of Rob Zombie's timeline. In the theatrical version, after a bloody hunt, Michael Myers is finally brought down. He falls onto farm equipment and is then gunned down mercilessly by the police. Disoriented after stabbing Michael's already lifeless body, Laurie walks outside. After that, she is committed to a psychiatric hospital. In the director's cut, the ending is even darker. Michael, for God and hell, die. Dr. Loomis tries to confront Michael, but is killed by the killer's own hands. Moments later, police open fire on Myers, finally taking him down. In a disturbing vision, Laurie picks up the knife and stabs her already defeated brother in one last act of rage and despair. After that, she's taken to a psychiatric institution, suggesting that trauma completely consumed her. No matter which version you watch, the outcome is the same. Michael Myers meets his definitive death in this timeline. Rob Zombie closes out his duology in a grim way, leaving no room for the killer's return. The Trap. Now, ignoring all the previous films except the original 1978 classic, Halloween 2018 resets the story and shows Laurie Strode still deeply traumatized 40 years after Michael Myers' first attack. She's isolated herself, turned her home into a fortress, and spent her entire life preparing for Michael's inevitable return. In the movie, he escapes from a psychiatric hospital and heads back to Haddonfield, giving Laurie the chance to finally put an end to her nightmare. She sets her revenge plan into motion and, along with her daughter Karen and granddaughter Allison, lures Michael into her house, which is really a carefully built trap. When the basement door locks, there's no turning back. The 3 women set the house on fire, leaving Michael to burn in the flames. But at the beginning of Halloween Kills 2021, we find out it didn't quite end that way. The mob's revenge. As the Strode family flees in desperation, a team of firefighters arrives to put out the fire, unknowingly frees Michael from the burning basement. After escaping the blaze, Michael launches into another brutal killing spree in Haddonfield. The town, already in panic, spirals into chaos when the residents band together, determined to hunt and kill Michael themselves. Led by Tommy Doyle, little boy from the first movie, the mob decides evil can't be contained by the police, only destroyed. The mob unleashes decades of pent-up rage, striking with bats, knives, and bullets.
It's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good scare.
The masked killer falls to the ground, apparently defeated. In a final blow, Karen Strode stabs him in the back, believing she's ended the threat once and for all. But evil doesn't die that easily. Seconds later, just as everyone thinks it's over, Michael begins to move. He rises, then slaughter each of his attackers one by one, leaving the ground soaked in blood. Without hurry, Myers returns to his childhood home and finds Karen, who is brutally murdered. When it comes to horror movies, the end is always a relative term. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with all the videos, because just like Michael Myers, we always come